Hey everyone, today we're looking at the new NIKKOR 300mm lens designed to complement the 55mm kit lens in the D7500 package I just purchased. Now, this is supposed to boast the same quick, silent autofocusing system as the kit lens, except with that longer zoom so you can take shots from a little farther away, but still capture the same quality, detail, and color. So let's crack this open and see if it does exactly that. Alright, on the box we have everything written out for us. The AF-P DX NIKKOR 70-300mm f-stop 4.5 to 6.3 G ED VR vibration reduction technology in this lens. And let's see how they packaged it. Alright, we got the manual, warranty information, and moment of truth. Oh, look at this! Unlike the 55mm, they did pay for the bubble wrap. I guess this is a step-up lens, right? There you go, it's that same cardboard, padding with a little bit of bubble wrap on the ends. I appreciate that, but what is this? That same cheapo back cover. I don't understand that. Just, well, whatever. At least the front is substantial. So there we go. Boom, there we go. And as you can see here, pretty substantially long lens, being 300mm, and very nice. Actually, a better smooth motion through the zoom compared to the 55mm. In fact, I'm not really feeling very much of a variance in resistance there, so that's great. And I bet, yeah, the focus ring is just as nice. It's very smooth. That's some beautifully smooth resistance right there. It just feels great in the hand. And once again, though, for those of you who like your lenses to be metallic, there's a lot of plastic going on in this lens, keeping it lightweight as much as possible as a 300mm lens can be. And on the lens here, as far as information that's not on the box that we saw, there's just the minimum focus specs here at 1.1 meters or 3.6 feet. And of course, for filters in the cover, it's a 58mm diameter. Now, just like the 55mm kit lens, this 300mm lens has that ultra fast, supposedly near silent autofocus pulse motor, and also that vibration reduction stabilization technology. So this should be pretty on par with that. And I'm curious if the autofocus with this lens on will be superior to the one that we just tried in the 55mm. And really that's what I'm looking for, as well as its ability to really zoom in and get those beautiful shots from a farther distance. So let's slap it on the D7500 and see how it performs. Whenever I get my hands on a long focus lens, I start to feel like a PI, so I always like to make sure that the lens can actually fulfill those capabilities. Here we have an example of zooming from 70 to 300mm, and even from that zooming into the photo to see if the crisp clarity is there, and sure enough, you can read those license plates, you can read the brand of the car, whatever, quite easily. Pretty fantastic sharpness there. And I even redid the test with my subject in motion, a car here going 35 miles per hour, and sure enough, once again, very crisp, very clear shots with a great performance from the autofocusing in photography mode. Now that being the case, here's another shot where I'm focusing on the bridge and then on the background behind that bridge bar, and I'm going to repeat the process in video mode. In photography mode, it's very snappy, almost immediate, focusing where I want it to go. However, here you're going to see in video mode, as I move the autofocusing center onto that bridge bar, it just cannot find its focus on there. And although at times it could do that in video mode relatively quickly, it just had difficulty being consistent. And that to me is that main deficit that's really coming mainly from the D7500 body itself. But as far as functioning spectacularly well in photography mode, it just continued to do so throughout my shooting. As you can see, just capturing crisp detail in varying degrees of light, with the main deficit of course being in low light conditions, as this lens has a minimum f-stop at 4.5. But as you can see here, with adequate lighting, it just has some amazing capabilities when it comes to capturing detail, getting really close to wildlife or anything you're looking at and capturing all the fine details of their feathers, face, or that wall back there that you saw. And it really was just a joy to be able to go out there and get really close to the subjects that you found that you want to take a picture of. And sometimes you might even be shocked by what you're picking up in the lens, particularly since the screen on the camera itself is high definition, and so you can really see the quality it's capturing up close. And I like this shot right here just because it gives an example of what it's like to take a shot from a distant 55mm lens and then what you can do with a 300mm lens from the exact same position as a photographer and make it just a much more impressive shot of the subject. Now, despite my earlier example of video and its autofocusing, I did find it still to be functional. And as you can see here, it does find its focus. And as long as you keep what you want in the focus area, it keeps it relatively well. But just like we saw with the 55mm lens, it does tend to go in and out of focus occasionally. However, I did find with this 300mm, it was a bit snappier overall in finding focus originally and keeping focus as you kept your target in the focus area. Now you can come to your own conclusions on the quality of the video, but I found that as long as it stayed in focus, the video was pretty phenomenal overall, capturing crystal clear detail as long as it stayed in focus. The audio pickup on the camera, however, was a different story in this scene, as I had a nightmare of a time dealing with the wind, the small, gentle gusts of wind that were present there. In the same scene, we can start to see some of the deficits of this lens in lower light. This is the same outdoor lighting except now with a canopy cover, and of course zoomed in at 300mm, the minimum f-stop I can go to is 6.3. And as you zoom in, comparing it in your mind back to the duck photos, you can just see that the clarity and the amount of detail present is far less than when I had sunshine blasting on the duck compared to this canopy cover on these beavers. Nutria. Now the barrel distortion in this lens is almost non-existent, which is in stark contrast to the 55mm. And I found even as I went up to the slower f-stops, it was about the same, which means that barrel distortion in this lens is a non-issue. As I continued to test out the 300mm lens, I was impressed to see the consistency and its dynamic range and color depth throughout all the photos and videos that it was capturing. And as you can see from some of these wildlife shots, the 300mm was fantastic at producing this smooth, creamy bokeh and drawing the viewer's eyes to exactly where the photographer intended. And ultimately, it was very good at finding what I wanted to be in focus through its autofocusing mode. And I think this video right here really does a good job in illustrating the capabilities of the autofocus on this lens when you're zoomed all the way into that 300mm. And I think in general though, when filming wildlife with this camera, you're probably going to want to be in a manual focus mode, although it can film in an autofocus mode, which is what this currently is doing, but you can still see some of that fluctuation. The vibration reduction technology worked extremely well. This right here being a shot where I'm starting in 300mm zoomed in and zooming back out to 70mm as I pan upwards. And you can just see there is still a little bit of that, fluctuation with my wrist movements, but overall very smooth considering this is a handheld heavy camera at this point with this nice long lens on it. And I was just overall impressed. It does take everything that I'm doing, all those micro movements, and it just makes it a lot smoother, even if the movement's too big to really eliminate. And this right here, I purposely moved the camera to see how bad it can get if you're just shaking the camera, and of course that's still there. But as you can see, that VR technology is still trying to smooth even that out to make it a little bit more passable in video format. And then as I zoom in here, you can kind of see that sluggishness from the autofocus, but once again, just still a little bit snappier than it was in the 55mm. And lastly, here we have some night shots just to illustrate the limitations of this lens. Considering its fastest f-stop is 4.5, you can see that as the light kind of goes away and there's not very many sources of light, it becomes difficult for this lens to really pick up a lot of detail and produce sharp quality photos. However, it did do quite well if there was a specific source of light, like a lamp or something like that. But when pointed up at the stars, even though it could take the shot, it just ended up being very grainy, not very sharp. Alright, there you guys go, the 300mm super telephoto zoom lens from NIKKOR/Nikon, which came with my D7500 in the kit. A pretty fantastic zoom lens that captured some stellar photography as you guys saw, and of course with that autofocus challenge, although a bit better than the 55mm, however still having issues, especially when you really approach that minimum focus distance. But beyond that, a fantastic lens that did a great job in fulfilling its promises as far as having that quiet, smooth autofocusing system, and of course able to capture beautiful shots in a variety of situations. Now, I hope you guys liked the video. Don't forget to comment and let me know what you think about this lens and this camera, and I'll see you guys next time on the next Drive-By Reviews.